Welcome to the TV podcast. Today I'm joined by Bevis, the founder of Tide. George, how are you doing today?
Yeah, really having a great day and looking forward to talk to you.
Thank you. So let's start off by asking you 4 questions. What did you have for breakfast this morning?
I maintain a very strict breakfast diet of always having a high quality pan of chocolate early in the morning and
Good.
nothing else.
Good. And what is your favourite company right now apart from Tide?
I really respect what Monzo have done in consumer banking.
Interesting. And what is the one thing you would have done before you were 20?
One thing I would wish I'd done before I was 20, I would have liked to have created Snapchat or Facebook.
That's a good answer. And tell us one thing we don't know about you. It could be anything.
My first job was in a fish and chip restaurant. I worked there for 7 months and I learned how I could guess what food people were going to order before they came to the counter just by looking at them. Sadly, I've lost those skills now.
Fair enough. So you started Tide nearly 4 years ago now. What was the idea behind it and why did you start it?
I have a slightly unusual background. So I had been an entrepreneur before. Also, to my shame, I've been a banker for quite a bit of my career, and I've done quite a lot of work on public policy. I'm not part of the Labour Party anymore, but in 2012 I wrote their book on small business policy. In 2014 I created their network of a few hundred digital professionals as well. So in late 2014 it seemed completely obvious to me that having experienced the pain of business admin as a repeat entrepreneur, that there was a role to eliminate that centred on the current account, but actually about a much wider range of services than just the current account, for a new generation of banking service. And so it was obvious to me that somebody needed to go and create Tide, and it turns out that my slightly unusual career background doesn't really qualify for me for anything else, but it did qualify me to go and create Tide, and so that's what I did. And the truth is, we've never really meaningfully iterated the core concept. That's always stayed the same.
Nice. And did you just wake up one morning and think you would start a bank, or what was that eureka moment?
So, in my time in banking, I'd been paid, far too much to write pointless PowerPoints that never went anywhere on financial services innovation. So I was much more aware of the landscape than many other people. I think the moment when it was always known as a truism that traditional banks were terrible for small businesses, but the breakthrough inspiration was when in the States a company called Simple.com launched what was effectively a bank, but they were just a software business on top of someone else's back end for banking services. Nobody had ever done that before, and that was really what inspired me and the early team in Tide to realise that it was achievable to build a banking service without raising 50 million up front.
Nice. And at the moment you're just focusing on SMEs in the UK, or can you do international now?
We're focusing on SMEs in the UK right now. We have aspirations to expand overseas before too long, but today our customers are all in the UK.
Nice. And we saw in the report recently you were opening 9% of business accounts. Has that gone up now? Is it still about the same?
We're not disclosing account numbers month by month, but yes, we have enjoyed very, very healthy growth since we launched.
Great. And I guess how do you stop that growth rate from tanking? What would you have to do to keep that growth rate up to avoid anything happening?
We've been very lucky with this business that we got in early. There are other people now trying to have a go at challenger banking for small businesses, whereas we were really the first in the UK, and we got a head start. And that meant that from very early on, our product was always a lot better than the competition, and that in turn led to a load of viral growth. We still get a lot of viral growth. So for us to continue to have an increasing share of the UK market, we need to continue to be the best product. We are, I would say, a year ahead of any competitor in our space. As long as we continue to invest in having the most advanced product that saves small business owners the most time, then we will continue to enjoy this phenomenal viral growth.
Amazing. And you raised $26 million from investors like Alex Chessman and Zopa, Eileen from Passion Capital. Did you know these investors already, or how did that come about?
I knew quite a lot of them, yes. So I had run a wildly unsuccessful retail e-commerce business from 2008 to 2011. And in those days, the dot-com scene in London was much, much smaller, and it felt like all the CEOs and all the investors knew each other. And although the business itself was a total failure and a write-off, we had built a reputation as having executed, albeit a fundamentally flawed concept, but we executed it relatively well. And that meant that when it came time to fundraise for Tide, in fact, almost everyone who put money into the business in the first 2 years were people that I knew or had known for some years from that prior business, yeah.
Interesting. And you recently stepped down from being the CEO. What made you do that, and why was the right time to step down?
Yeah. I loved being CEO of Tide, but I was always aware that I would not necessarily consider myself to have what I would call comparative advantage in the scale-up stage. So I'd worked in businesses that had up to 100 staff, and I worked in businesses that have many thousand. But the stage between 100 staff and 1,000 staff, which is the journey that Tide is just beginning to embark upon now, is a stage where I could not hand on heart say I would be the most expert person at doing it. Or indeed, if I'm being completely honest, that is where my passion lies. My passion is in the earliest stages, and so I was happy to take the view that someone else would probably drive the business with just that little less risk and through the next few stages. And certainly we were also lucky that at the point that I and the board agreed that we would look for a new CEO, the business was doing very well, and that meant the truth is, with these absolutely global top-class CEOs, nobody has a really easy job of finding one. After all, even Google spent many, many years trying to hire a CEO. But we did have about as good a choice of great CEOs as one could hope for in fintech. We were able to hire an utterly exceptional one, and so it was, once I knew we could get Oliver, it was a very easy decision to hand the reins to him.
And were you all very supportive of you stepping down?
Yeah, I think I'd always been pretty open about the fact that the scale-up might be best served by someone else. So I think, I don't think anyone felt like they'd not got their value out of me. I mean, we've clearly grown a very substantial business with great prospects.
And are you an early riser? What's a typical day like for you?
I'm not an early riser. In fact, I think one of the an unfortunate problem that lots of entrepreneurs have is that if you are naturally somebody who works best late at night, and then your brain's buzzing, and then you've got a million things to worry about, and you can't sleep, which can lead to reasonable sleep problems, and I certainly have experienced that in my time. So no, I was always in the office by 9 o'clock, and actually when you've got a young workforce, which we do, if you're in the office by 9 o'clock, you are almost by definition going to be one of the first people to get in.
Of course.
But I wouldn't consider that to be being an early riser. I tended to work pretty solidly and fairly intensively in the office through till 6:30, 7. Then I'd go home, have something to eat, because usually the blood sugar was getting a bit low, and then get back on the laptop for sort of 9 through till midnight.
Nice. And what apps can't you live without?
Very boring tasting apps, actually. I don't have that many on my phone. I use Google Inbox instead of Gmail because it has some advanced functionality that I find most useful.
Nice.
Aside from that, I would say that I probably use most of the same apps that many of the people listening to this podcast use. And sadly, I don't think I've really got much to add on top. The one thing I would mention, though, is that I use this very unusual Android phone from BlackBerry, which has full Android, but it does have a physical keyboard as well. If you're old school like me, I just recently turned 40, then and you never really got comfortable with a soft keyboard, then I can strongly recommend the new BlackBerries with the physical keyboard and Android. They work brilliantly, and you can definitely type a bit faster.
Great. And obviously being an entrepreneur has many challenges, lots of ups and downs. What has been the most challenging moment for you starting Tide, and where did you go when the going got really tough?
Tide's biggest challenge, it's still a challenge now, though we're getting better at addressing it, is awareness. A B2B banking service will never be as sexy as a B2C banking service, for example, and so the level of user growth that some of the fastest growing B2C services experience are just not attainable by anyone in B2B. So that awareness problem continues to exist, although we do enjoy very good viral growth. So we've certainly made good progress against it. And in fact, our market share as a share of new accounts is probably higher than any of the consumer players, which is notable. But in terms of it's not like I ever had to go anywhere to deal with the stress of that while I was running Tide. That was always going to be, it was a known problem, and everyone always knew it was a problem. And in fact, if anything, we grew faster than we expected, so it wasn't too traumatic. However, in previous businesses, I ran this second-hand trading company from 2008, 2011, which was unbelievably traumatic. I remember one weekend where if we didn't convince one person to reverse their feedback of our selling to them on eBay, then eBay were going to shut down our account, and we did most of our business through eBay at that time, and I had to essentially strongly incentivize someone in Wigan, I think it was. Somehow I had to get them on the phone between Friday and Sunday to convince them that I would essentially offer them any money to reverse their feedback.
Really?
So experiences like that, real near-death experiences. Tide has not had any of those. Tide has had a relatively smooth ride, but in the past I've certainly experienced them, and obviously lots of entrepreneurs have different ways of dealing with them. One of our investors, Greg Marsh, talks about how he liked to be in a sauna and then go for a cold swim, I think it was. I know if you read Tony Blair's book, he talks about how stiff drink was his means, so I think everyone finds their method. Mine, in those days when I was running that e-commerce business, was I became slightly addicted to the first series of The Only Way is Essex.
Okay, interesting.
Brilliant television.
Good.
And really helped with my traumas at that time. Sadly, the later series went downhill.
Fair enough. And why should people, and what makes Tide different from your regular business bank account?
Ultimately, what Tide is about is giving small business owners back their time and alleviating the admin burden that they have in running their business. That manifests itself in lots of ways. So you can set Tide up and get a current account in 5 minutes on your mobile, and that would never be true of a traditional bank. But once you've got that account, it does a whole load of other things for you, reflecting the fact that you're a small business owner, it will automate a load of your bookkeeping for you, so it'll categorize all of your transactions for you, and you can write little comments saying what it was you were spending money on. It integrates really nicely with all the major accounting packages in a way that's much more sophisticated and much more seamless than you would be used to from a traditional bank. You can send invoices from Tide. If you receive an invoice from another company you have to pay, you can upload that invoice into Tide, and Tide will read the invoice, work out who you're supposed to be paying, and then prepare that payment for you. And there's a whole host of other features in there to help save you and your business time.
And right now, how long does it take to open an account?
5 minutes.
And that's it?
Yeah, I mean, people, if you're good at it, you can do it in 90 seconds.
Wow, interesting. And what do you think has been one of the biggest challenges for Tide, and for you personally?
As I mentioned before, Tide's biggest challenge has always been awareness, which we, overcome a bit with viral growth and a bit just with paid marketing, although viral is more important to us, or word of mouth advocacy is more important to us. And we overcome that, or we achieve that by just delivering a great product. We have a very high net promoter score, unlike any traditional bank. Our customers do genuinely love what Tide does. So that's how we overcome that.
Amazing. And where do you want to see this next 5 years, or where would you like it to see in the next 5 years?
Not quite 5 years, but I've told people before that I would like Tide by 2026 to be serving 50 million small businesses globally. We get to achieve that. But no, it requires Tide to be a massive global business. But our view is that the need we're servicing is a global need, and there will be one or two or three enormous global businesses which will evolve, which will have invested the most in R&D to have the best user experiences, and they will have customers all over the world, and we plan on being one of those businesses. Right now we're certainly the global front runner, and so long as we sustain that into the future, then there's no reason why we shouldn't be serving 50 million small businesses by 2026.
Amazing. When would you IPO, or what would you like to do?
I think it's a bit too early to make final decisions about that. My emotional preference, if you like, is certainly to IPO, and actually I would still see that as being a relatively early stage on the journey, just as it was for Google. However, I'm not the only member of the board, so those decisions will be made over the next few years. But my instinct is this is a business that ought to IPO.
Very cool. And finally, what's the one piece of advice you would give to an entrepreneur?
In the disastrous retail e-commerce business I made, all of the disaster of that business was down to not understanding what I consider to be the single golden rule of startups, which is that your cost of customer acquisition should be less than a third of the lifetime value of every new customer that you bring on. If you haven't done that maths for your own business, go and do it now. And if it isn't the case that you're making at least 3 times as much from each customer as it costs you to acquire them, then get out of that business and do something easier, because it will be very, very hard to scale that business.
Thank you. And just to add, where can our audience sign up to Tide?
Visit tide.co or download the app in the App Store.
Super. George, thank you very much for your time, and good luck with us.
Not at all, thank you.
No worries, thank you.